Okay, so welcome to the Detour podcast. Our guest today is 8 times world champion in 2 different cycling disciplines. Yep, 8. That's correct. You heard 8 times plus twice an Olympian. And you've seen her racing around a Nutrigrain packet on the TV. So it is, of course, Caroline Buchanan. G'day, Caroline.
Thanks for having me. Hello from Canberra.
All the way from Canberra. Now, I remember meeting you because you were looking stunning. You just won the Cyclist of the Year award. The Oppie Oscar, I can't remember what year it was now, back a few years back.
2013.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, well, there you go. And everyone was flocking around you, but I managed to congratulate you. But it was a really great night, actually, a special night. And you spoke really, really well. But I just mentioned that TV commercial, which has made you pretty famous in lots of ways. It looks really cool. What's it been like doing that? How did it all come about?
Yeah, well, I think it came about when I was growing up in BMX racing. My dad, he was always like, it's going to be hard to make a career out of BMX. It wasn't an Olympic sport back then. And he was kind of, preparing me to build my brand. And we always spoke about things. And I would have been about 8 years old. And we said, I always had the Nutrigrain boxes. And we're like, one day, like an athlete who's a cyclist will be on one of these boxes, not a swimmer. So I think whether it's manifesting it and all these years later, the opportunity popped up. It really popped up from a lot of pain that I went through in my career, the opportunity and how it evolved. So these things always are funny how they pop up. But yeah, so Nutrigrain's Unstoppable series, they've always supported Ironman in the past and a little bit of a different branding. Their strength of just basically the pillars of strength, courage and determination. They were putting a whole Unstoppable campaign and they thought, perfect person to be on a bike and to be on the cover and shoot a TV commercial as well as be on the boxes and share that little bit of inspiration to the kids that, they can choose a different career path. They can go through major injuries and setbacks and still aim for Olympic Games and to be at the top. So, it aligned with a lot of things that I was doing and pretty cool to, walk through Coles and Woolworths and see your face on some boxes is pretty neat.
Well, you've given your sponsor a plug. I better give my sponsors a plug because our podcast wouldn't happen without our great sponsors. So firstly, we have Bike Exchange. And of course, you would know about Bike Exchange yourself, Caroline, because at the moment, it's pretty hard to buy, especially the bikes under $1,000 in a bike shop. They're running out everywhere. Cycling has become hugely popular through the pandemic, especially in Victoria. Not much else to do.
It's booming.
It's booming. Yeah. So if you jump on the net Bike Exchange, it's where the world buys, sells, learns and rides. Bike Exchange, where a bike is never just a bike. As I mentioned, bike sales are going through the roof at the moment. So I had to buy a bike for a friend just recently. First time I've ever had to go retail because the bike shops my wholesale mates didn't have any. So I jumped online and got it through Bike Exchange. It worked really, really well. So I'm pretty happy with that. Then we've got Let's Go Motorhomes. Our good friend Jerry Ryan at Jayco Caravans. This is another one of his fantastic companies and great partner of ours. Let's Go Motorhomes. So get out and explore your backyard. Hire a Let's Go motorhome or camper van. And even though there's not many people can't come from overseas at the moment, the domestic sales have gone through the roof as far as rentals, which is fantastic. And they've got a special going at the moment, which I reckon is spot on for you, Caroline. I can see you jumping into a Let's Go motorhome. So it's called their Early Bird Special. So you just book 90 days in advance and you get 5% off your next Aussie adventure. But Andrew in at Let's Go Motorhome said to tell Caroline if she's interested in getting a Let's Go Motorhome to go for a bit of a trip anywhere, once they open some borders up, he'll look after you. So
perfect.
Yeah, it is.
As long as he's got room for all my bikes, then sign me up.
Yeah, they've got so many different models. My brother's just bought a new Jayco recently, and he's got a special little area at the back, and he puts his little motorbike in there, and his two pushies. So he's got it all worked out. And our other great partner is Lexus Blackburn. You can't really visit Lexus of Blackburn when you're up in Canberra, but they are a fantastic sponsor down here. They sponsor the women's Herald Sun Tour, the Lexus of Blackburn Bay Crits. The Bay Crits is my little passion, a wonderful event. And the Moore family, great supporters of cycling. I took on the Tour de France a couple of years ago, and they loved it. They've just recovered, actually. So Andrew, Sarah, Bethany. So we'll click back into the terrible accident you had in December in 2017, which was sort of an off-road, buggy accident. And you ended up with broken nose, broken sternum, 2 collapsed lungs, dangerous bleeding, and around your heart, and no phone reception. And so your partner at the time had to get you into the car and drive you a fair way to Cooma Hospital. So tell us about that terrible situation.
Yeah, so it was just like a freak accident. Being an action sport athlete my whole life and riding bikes, you never really get that injured riding bikes. It obviously happened not on a bike. But yeah, it was quite terrifying. It was something that I almost lost my life, and very grateful that I can still be here today and continue riding. I'd say out of my 8 world titles, national championships, competing at 2 Olympic Games, everything I've achieved, to be back on a bike again after having 2 years off and just going through all the hurdles and setbacks was the best achievement I've ever had. The thing which I think made it so hard was throughout I had some medical complications, and I actually snapped a titanium plate in my chest they put in to fixate my sternum together. So when I went back in for a second surgery, then 4 days later, I heard the bolts backing out of my chest. So went back in for another scan, and they said, "Oh, we've got to redo this plate system again. It's not working." So third sternum reconstruction, they ended up plating my chest with 28 bolts and screws, 2 cable wires around it that's in there for life. So yeah, I go through airport detectors and get that little orange box that pops up on my chest every time. And yeah, it's with me now forever, now that it finally, the bones calcified, it all healed. It took 9 months the third time around for everything to set, and then I could ease back into my training and build my body back up to be a professional athlete. So yeah, that was definitely a wild 2 years that went by.
Well, I don't know a lot about BMX or mountain bikes, although I did go to the World Mountain Bike Trials, which are up in Cairns, and it blew me away. It's just such a wonderful event, especially the downhill. I reckon I'm crazy and I'll do anything. I was going to ride down that downhill. I chickened out. I couldn't have done it, I don't think. But but so I don't know a lot about it. But I've been Googling you, and you are a real go-getter. It's quite staggering. So how has it been? How long before you could actually, when was your first competitive event after that terrible accident?
First competitive event would have been the start of this year, a World Cup actually in Australia. So it was going to be my first of the Olympic qualifiers coming into the Tokyo Olympics for BMX racing. And that had been roughly sort of 4 months of being back on the bike, back in the gym, and preparing. So it was quite challenging to come in at 80% to a race and be a mid-pack semi-finalist. It really ate me up, which ironically, as soon as COVID happened and it put a pause for all the athletes to qualify towards the Olympics, and all the rounds got put off, I was able to go back to the drawing board and say, what are my biggest areas of weakness as an athlete? And it was definitely just my strength and conditioning. To be a BMX racer, you need to, for me at 63 kilos, I need to be deadlifting 140 kilos. I need to be squatting 150 kilos. It's all about power to weight ratio. So I need to be putting out 20 watts per kilo on a bike, doing that high end cadence. So I knew where I needed to be and I wasn't there. So this whole basically last 3 months has just been all back into strength and conditioning and building that machine. So I haven't been bored at all through this. It's been a real blessing in disguise, and yeah, super positive too.
So how do you feel your form is like right now?
Really good, strength wise, and then mountain biking I've been putting a big push because I do both disciplines. There's a really big movement in mountain biking for women going towards this freestyle, free ride aspect. So some of the big global tours like Crankworx, they're now really pushing the women into this. It's always been the men that have been out there on the joyride courses, doing the big jumps, doing the tricks, but never for the women. So now that this door's opened up and I have great partners like Trek that are behind me, they've sort of just said, like, you've ticked so many boxes in your career with winning world titles and going to Olympics and things, to BMX and mountain biking, what's next? And I'm fortunate enough that my boyfriend has a massive motocross motorbike airbag in the backyard. So I basically have a sort of 9-meter tall roll in, drop in and hit about 40 kilometers. And then the lip's a 9-foot tall lip to a big airbag jump. So if anyone wants to follow along my social media, you'll see what I've been up to on at Buchanan 68, or just type in my name, Caroline Buchanan, and see what I've been up to.
Well, I'll get back to the Olympics in a minute, because you've touched on something with the whole Crankworx setup. I mean, I've been Googling that, and it's absolutely crazy. Some of the air that some of the people get in some of those events, and there's slope style, speed and style, pump track, dual slalom, and downhill. And one of my spies tells me, you are just a natural at this Crankworx. You are born to do it, and reckons you're going to be the best female in the world at this crazy sport. So tell us a little bit about Crankworx.
Yeah, so it's most of the time I'm always on the UCI tour with BMXing and obviously like the world disciplines for mountain biking, but Crankworx is its own separate organization, and they've done a really good job of just harnessing the passion of mountain biking and putting events on which the athletes want. So it's so broad, and you're out there in these locations. The first one's in Rotorua, the next one's in Austria, Innsbruck, and then you finish up in Whistler, just the mecca of where Crankworx began in Canada. And basically from every day, you're on a different mountain bike, which is the best part of it. So you end up going there with sort of 4 or 5 bikes. You hit all these different disciplines of mountain biking, and you do a different event each day. So so
you do all of them. So you do the whole 5 different types. Fantastic.
Well, the more you do, the more points you get towards the overall king or queen of Crankworx, which really is that most versatile all-round mountain biker, the one that can race downhill, the one that can do pump track with no chain, the one that can drop in on a speed and style course and do a backflip 360, whatever it is, and navigate, all the different tricks and things. So you've really got to be a broad spectrum athlete to be a queen of Crankworx or king of Crankworx athlete.
So because of your terrible injuries that you've just recovered from, does that enter your head that it might be a bit dangerous for you?
No, not at all. I think one of the first things the surgeon said to me was it would take the same amount of impact to do that amount of damage again. So I would have to be pinned underneath an off-road vehicle again, crushing me to be able to do the same damage. So that gave me a lot of confidence to go, I can't hurt myself this much on a bike. Here we go. But I do wear all the protective gear. So when I am doing, even on the airbag, the tricks in my yard, I wear my ankle braces, knee pads, shin guards. Like I have my mouth guard in, full face helmet, and I always wear a chest protector now when I compete. So I'm always padded up, ready to go.
So moving back to the Olympics, obviously you have a strong connection and love for the Olympics. Long before you were born, I competed at the Olympics 72. And that was the terrible Olympics that had the terrorist attack. So that was the first, and now you're trying to compete in the first, where in a postponed Olympic Games. So do you? Obviously, this has worked in your favour, this postponement, because you wouldn't have been anywhere near 100% for the Olympics if they had been held virtually now. So it's going to give you a much better chance.
Yeah, definitely. And no one's locked in at the moment. So we've got 3 girls in Australia going for 2 positions. And the events that they put back on the calendar prior to the Olympics will weight higher than the events for qualifying that have happened in the past. So it's really that sliding scale. And I think it's really going to show the ones that haven't slacked off through this COVID break and continue to work while the grandstands are empty. And for me, I've gone to 2 Olympic Games already. London was an absolute career highlight. I loved it. Rio, I felt there was a little bit more of a fear factor with everything going on, and it lost the spark of the games a little bit and the true like culture of the Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for Tokyo because I feel like sport can unite the world. I just did a big global music video with Oakley where they actually collaborated with all the Oakley athletes from around the world, and it was a Bob Marley remake, so iconic song. And it was really that reminder of sport. And I think coming into an Olympic Games to unite the world with a language that we all understand is something that I think is going to just be like one of the biggest Olympics to remember if it can be pulled off. So I'm excited for it.
It's like you've got unfinished business at the Olympics because, I mean, you won 8 world titles. So you've gone into 2 Olympics as one of the favourites, if not the outright favourite. It just hasn't come together like you would have wanted. I mean, I thought at London you were set to win that final. It just didn't happen on the day.
Yeah, London, I wasn't prepared for David Beckham to be standing back, like staring back at me in the crowd. And just the hugeness of the Olympic Games overwhelmed me. So, yeah, I didn't follow the process. I don't think I fully believed in myself. I was still quite a young athlete. And then it took a few more world titles to go into another Olympic Games to really hone in. And then, unfortunately, in Rio, I got pinched between 2 Russian athletes at the bottom of the start hill. And and that was my Olympics over and crashed in the first turn. So went up in the stands and watched from the stands the Olympic Games final. And even though for me it was quite devastating, you work for 4 years and you push so hard, dedicating your whole life to something. But to go up into the grandstands with the rest of the Australian team, and I was fortunate enough, I got a standing ovation from the crowd. And it was that special Olympic moment for me to really remember what sport's about, remember what the Olympics is about, and to get recognised as a champion athlete and just competitor. I'd always sort of fought really fair towards my competition, and one of the favourites, she's a Colombian, so it was a sea of Colombians there to support her. And for all of her family, grandparents, and, you know, thousands of Colombian fans just to stand up and give me that little moment to be like, you know, you fought and you haven't achieved it and you're in the semi-final and you're watching this race, but, you know, we respect you. That was, for me, an Olympic moment that, like, I can never take away. So if there isn't another Olympic Games in 2021 and I'm too old for the next ones, then for me, that's, you know, my real gold medal moment.
Yeah. So BMX is what you started at. How did the transition come from BMX to mountain bikes?
So yeah, BMX being more of just that grassroots feeder sport. We've got the likes of Anna Mears and Shane Kelly that have obviously crossed over into other cycling disciplines. They all started in BMX. So I started in BMX, and at 15, I was curious to know what the world of mountain biking was that everyone was raving on about. So it was a bet that I lost, and I had a friend that had to come to a BMX track and I had to go to a mountain bike event. And basically from there, I never just looked back. I started with the opportunity in Australia, getting a World Cup and a world title. And the venue, Stromlo Forest Park, was actually built from the ashes and built from where my family home lost their home in the 2003 Canberra bushfires. So we lost everything. We kept our bikes. And then this world-class facility was built just down the street in the forest. And that then hosted my first world title and my first world championship. So the stars really aligned just to kick off my mountain bike career from there. And 10 years ago, I moved to the States and based over there in California since, and have aligned with some great partners, and been doing both BMX and mountain biking professionally, sort of based from there.
So Wade Boots was your coach back in 2007. Is he still coaching you?
He is the head program manager of Australia. So he's more a program director for the BMX team and travels with us. And I've just got like a larger support network of other coaches that help me. I've got the Australian Institute of Sport, which does my strength and conditioning program, people that help me with my diet and nutrition. I've got an agency that I work with as well, Two Palms, for everything off the bike with my brand. And I've just been really fortunate to put that team together, which keeps that dream alive.
And how the actual training? I can just imagine. I mean, I know how to train for a bike race for a long tour in the pros, but how do you train for two disciplines like BMX and mountain bikes? Is there a bit of a crossover, or are they very different?
Skills, there's a bit of a crossover. So being a more versatile athlete helps you, get out of tricky situations and just be more all round. For BMX, it's that straight out sprint event. You've basically got 9 pedals down the hill before you're hitting these huge obstacles, and it's only a 45-second track. So it's more about that repeatable strength to get around. So 3 gym sessions every single week. They roughly last about 2 hours by the time you get in and out of the door. I then do a lot of my sprint interval training on a watt bike, and then a lot of time skill-based on the track too. So that sort of makes up BMX. And then for mountain biking, like I said, I've got this airbag set up in my backyard at the moment, which has been taking a lot of my time. So I block format that into at the moment, whether it's doing like a backflip or do 4 of them, and then I'll come back up, and then I might do a 360 and I'll do that 4 times, then I'll come back up and I'll do another thing. So yeah, I like to be quite analytical and watch footage and block it in and treat it like a training session. We don't know what's coming up at the moment, which is fortunate for me doing both disciplines. Now, depending how the calendar does pop back up, whether Olympics is on or cancelled, I've got those options. So yeah, fortunate. Sometimes blessing in disguise, and other times it can be pretty crazy juggling an international calendar for 2 sports.
So we're about to take a short break, but before we do, I've got a couple of questions here that have come through from Bike Exchange, the fans out there. What's your greatest objective at the moment?
Greatest objective at the moment is to build my strength level to where I need to be for the Olympic Games, so that come January, if everything comes back on the calendar, I'm ready to go. So yeah, objectives is to bring my squat back up to 150 kilos, my power clean back up to 90 kilos. So there's some real benchmark testing. And then I want to bring my watts per kilo back up on the bike to 20 watts per kilo for a 3-second sprint. So objectives is really there right now for BMX.
And the next question was, what bike do you enjoy riding more, BMX or mountain bike?
I'd say I enjoy riding a mountain bike more, just really versatile. I've got a trail bike at the moment, which, I think you can get out, you can do those long 2-hour trail rides if you want to, or I can put the seat down and put all the compression I need in my shocks and go and jump some really big jumps. So now with the technology of bikes, I think the most versatile bike is that trail bike. I have a 29er, so yeah, it's just something which I think if I had to have one bike, it would probably be that trail bike, because I can just do everything with it.
Okay, so we'll take a break, and when we return, we'll talk about how it all began.
Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Caroline, tell us about how it began. What got you involved in cycling in the first place?
So it began, we just drove past a local BMX track when I was 5 years old here in Canberra. And my brother started, my dad started. So from there, we basically started at Canberra level, started traveling to all the zones, which is the regionals. Did all the regionals when I was 9 years old. I won my first national championship. And I was also doing Taekwondo at the time. So my parents just said, do you want to get your black belt in Taekwondo, or do you want to travel to Paris and do your first BMX World Championships? So I took my Cabbage Patch doll, decided to give, Taekwondo a miss, and continued on with BMX. Took my Cabbage Patch doll to Paris, and that was the eye-opener to realise that it was that world-level event. I saw the opening ceremony. I saw all of the flags and my competitors. I got knocked out in the semi-final, and just from there, I'm being so hungry to come back the following year, which was in Argentina, and placed better. So I got that itch quite early.
So my next question I was going to say, did you ever picture yourself becoming world champion? But you obviously did, because you weren't that far off right from the start.
I think it took a while to build that confidence. I'd got seconds and thirds at all these World Championship events prior to being 14 years old. 14 years old, I really feel like for a female in the sport, you start hitting that point of like you're about to be a pro, but there isn't a lot of financial support at that point. So I was sort of questioning, do I want to finish school? Like what's happening? And I was a little bit lost. And I was fortunate that I had Lane Beachley, 7-time world surf champion. She had an Aim for the Stars program and a scholarship that supports girls in Australia. And I applied for her scholarship, and she gave me a call one day and said, the most important thing that someone's ever said to me, and it was, I believe in you. So it wasn't the financial aspect that did it. It was for her to say, I've paved that way. I've won 7 world titles, and like, I believe in you and I'll back you, whether it's financially or whether it's in 5 years' time and you need me to tell you straight. She's such a great Aussie icon. So yeah, for me, that was a turning point to really go, I want to take this professionally as a career, get some great mentors around me, treat it like a business, build the sport of BMX itself, because it had to come to a national level that was getting that media attention, was a known identity for me to even be able to be realistic, to think that I would have Australian brands take the sport serious. So when it became an Olympic sport in 2008 and I was too young, I waited until 2012 and we were the BMX Bandits. We were like the new kids on the block in the Summer Olympic Games. There was no action sport in the Summer Olympic Games at that point. So, now it's a different industry. And I think come 2021 Olympics, there's now 4 new action sports into the games with surfing, skateboarding, freestyle BMX, speed climbing, I think they've put into. So it's a different story. I think, the action sport is the way for the kids of the future, and they're really opening it up in the Summer Olympics to not just the core sports like they used to.
Yeah, and as you say, like back in the 80s, BMX was huge, and you mentioned the BMX Bandits. Well, Nicole Kidman probably made it pretty famous with that movie. But where is it now? Where would you put BMX now compared to those halcyon days of back in the late 80s?
Yeah, the late 80s definitely boomed. The likes of Rad and those remakes. I was fortunate enough to go and actually race a Rad replica track that was in Texas and see what it was like back in the day, which was pretty fun. I think now it's in a better place than ever. Not only just action sport in general. I think being a female in action sport, there are a lot of brand opportunities and a lot more pathways and support that's open. So that sort of makes me really proud, because to come through there was quite a bit of a hardship initially, and then now it's I thrive, and like I love still riding basically a kid's bike for a living, which is pretty awesome to say. But I think to now to be a BMX athlete, you can make it all the way to Olympic Games. Same with a mountain bike athlete with cross country, you can make it all the way to Olympic Games. But more importantly, there's so many different sanctioned tours around the world that have their big prize money and have the sponsors and support crew backing it. So I think, the options are really open now.
Do you reckon that BMX gets enough support from the governing, the Australian government, the governing body?
I mean, the way that it works is based off medal tallies, and I think BMX is such an unpredictable sport that it is a little bit of a lottery. You do roll the dice, so it's hard to put bets on it. And even though whilst Australia, we've had the #1 quota spot team, we've had the highest ranked guys with Sam Willoughby, with myself, we've come into Olympic Games as the top 3 times round, and we've never won an Olympic gold medal as a team. So we've had, we've had myself, had some life-threatening injuries. We've had Kai Sakaki-Bara, who's in a coma and he's still recovering. We've had Sam Willoughby paralysed in a wheelchair. So when you look at like a tight-knit unit of the BMX Olympic team, it's tough. It's really tough, sort of be honest about it. But I think, if we as a program can get those medals, it'll be really good these next Olympic Games to sort of put that, all behind it for all of us. But at the moment, the likes of the road cyclings and track cycling, they get more funding and support based off the medal tally that they bring. So that's sort of how it works. Yeah, who's going to get the most return on investment? And BMXing is a bit of a commodity.
Well, I was going to talk about the the general respect amongst riders in the peloton on the road. But obviously, by the way you talk, there's that same sort of respect amongst the BMX fraternity.
Yeah, hugely. At the end of the day, we've got no white lines. It's quite aggressive, exactly like it is at the sprint at the end of a peloton. Everyone wants to win. But we're all out there pushing ourselves. We're all putting our bodies on the line. We've virtually everyone in an action sport that I know in BMX and mountain biking have had some major injuries. I've broke a lot of bones in my body and had a lot of time out. But, you do it because you love it. And you always have those breakups with the sport, but you always come back to it for that same reason. And the same feeling that the sport gave me when I was a 5-year-old girl is the same feeling that it gives me now. So, yeah, it's pretty special that we all understand it, and we're all pushing to obviously make the sport bigger and get these more opportunities out there, which it's growing. And to see Red Bull coming on board with some events in Australia, to see the likes of some venues, mountain bike parks popping up, there's just been, what I've heard, like $3 million put into a big mountain bike facility, Progressive in Sydney. So these things are popping up everywhere, and I think that's really exciting.
So you've been a commercial success with your sponsorship deals. So you've got Nutrigrain, Alpro, Fresh and Lean, Oakley, Boost Mobile, Fast House, Bell Helmets, Fist Hamwear, and Nobby Underwear. Have I missed anyone?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunate enough, I've got some really good support network behind me. I've built great relationships. So Oakley's been a 15-year contract since basically when I sort of started on the world tour, and they've backed me through Olympic Games, and they've all stood by me when I have had 2 years off as well. So that was sort of the best thing, was when I did get injured and out, a lot of the sponsors came back and said, we won't worry about contingency programs and podiums and all these things that were built into your contracts. We want to support you for you. We want to be there when you get back. We love that you don't just race, like you sell the passion of riding bikes, and that's more important than anything to us. And they stuck through it, and they continue with those salaries and just said, we'll see you when you get back. So, personally, that was a massive achievement to get through that.
So do you have a Jerry Maguire as your manager? Do you have him doing all the deals?
No, I hustled my butt off from the beginning. So I actually had some great mentors like Tim Chad, who's in the cycling industry with Chain Reaction, does the tours. He was one initially that I just said, I want this support. How do I do it? And every week when I was in school, he'd say, I want you to add 200 people on LinkedIn. Now we're going to learn how to write a proper email. Now we're going to reach out to media liaisons. When you get back from a World Cup, we're going to figure out how to get it on mainstream TV that following Monday. So all these things every week, building databases, building websites, like building the brand. I didn't know what I was doing back then at 14 years old. And once it really started snowballing and keeping those relationships alive, now I can get into my professional international career and be fortunate to partner with, the likes of Harley Davidson's, with Mercedes-Benz, with some massive corporate companies that would have never really aligned with cycling in the past, but to be able to be that unique blend and tell my story in a different way and meet their marketing objectives, it's fun. And I love the marketing side of it. But I do have a management team behind me and Two Palms Media, so they help coordinate everything.
Give them a plug. Well, you're obviously a very polished public speaker. I've only heard you the once, but you blew me away, actually. So do you do a lot of public speaking?
Not a lot, actually, because I have lived in America for 10 years, so I haven't been here. Now that I'm home in Australia, there's a lot more opportunities that are popping up, and I think for the future, that's something that coming back into Australia, I feel like I would love to, but my story's not really done yet, and being out for so long, I'm so hungry just to continue to tick the boxes for my career. I think now that I'm 29 years old and I really want to maximize this last 3 to 5 years of my professional career, my focus is on just making sure that I'm out there and doing my best and standing on top of podiums.
So the current pandemic, how is it affecting you? Obviously, you can't get any racing in at the moment.
Yeah, at the moment, we can't do any of the racing. But as I said, it's been able to go back to the drawing board strength-wise, to go back to the fundamentals of riding, to work on weaknesses, and then, to to pick up like this opportunity to work on free ride for mountain biking and be there ready. So I've just really been focusing on that, and then continuing to work with my brands and sponsors that partner with me and do signature collaborations. Yeah, so keeping busy, keeping it fun.
All right, well, what life lessons can people take away from the Caroline Buchanan story?
One thing that really helped me was the saying that this too shall pass. So when I did go through the 2 years of having to be quite patient and resilient, for people to know like what going through a sternum reconstruction is and having, you know, the internal bleeding and everything, it was very limiting in the start. You know, I couldn't drive a car for 6 months through the first initial 2 months of it all. You know, you can't lift your arms above your head, you can't push open doors. So you're very much like a T-Rex who's very fragile. Yeah, that was challenging. But yeah, to say this too shall pass, I think with the COVID and everything happening right now, it's something that gave me a lot of faith every single day, just to continue to keep my head held high and to be grateful every single day.
Well, Caroline, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. And I can tell you I'll be watching very intently how you progress into next year, and especially the Olympics. I'll be looking forward to that. And thanks very, very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. If anyone wants to follow on social, it's at cbuchanan68, or I also have a girls' scholarship program, Buchanan Next Gen, which I put money back into the next generation of BMX athletes. So yeah, follow along and keep you all updated on this crazy ride.
Thanks, Caroline. Good luck, Dale.
Thank you.